Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter, where I talk to guests specifically on Wednesdays who have a story to tell. We call this Warrior Wednesdays, and it's really talking about those stories of whatever we've been through in this thing that we call life and really into that place of hope. As a reminder, if this is your first time watching, make sure if you are watching it on YouTube that you click down that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. Or if you're watching it on any of the streaming platforms like E360, Apple, Fire, Amazon, Roku, whatever it happens to be, make sure that you add it into your favorites or your watch list. And again, so that you don't miss another episode. And I am super excited for my guest tonight. And I know I say that every single time, but every single guest that I bring on is just incredible. And being able to share their story, especially on Wednesdays, is really important because the more that we can have these type of conversations, the more that we can really truly save lives and show people that they're not alone and that there is hope in whatever you may be going through in life. So without further ado, I am going to bring up my guest. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your story.
Yeah. Um, my name is Michael Barber. I'm a Colorado native, grew up right here in Lakewood and now live in Denver. Um, Long time coming, but I've now worked for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in the Colorado chapter. So we'll probably dive into it a little bit more, but we have chapters all around the country that cover the whole US and Puerto Rico now as well. And I get the honor of covering the whole Colorado chapter, everything from helping our program team of volunteers put on suicide prevention education to working with our board and fundraising, and a little bit of everything here and there. So no 2 days are the same, but yeah, it's a fun journey, and I'm happy to be a Colorado resident and get to work with AFSP. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, amazing. And I am curious what really led you into wanting to be a part of that organization?
Yeah, there was a number of things. I had been in nonprofit for a couple of years. I worked at a small regional nonprofit here in Colorado, helping Parkinson's families in Colorado and Wyoming. Fell in love with working in nonprofit, especially with the fundraising side of things. Have an awesome team that I'm still connected with over there and help out when I can. And then AFSP actually reached out to me on LinkedIn, and they said the position had been open for a little while. They were just looking at candidates and asked if I wanted to apply. This was one of those weird moments for me that it was just a lot of things lining up at the same time. I had gotten quite a bit of experience. It was one of those small nonprofits that I worked for that I just got to say yes to every opportunity they gave me and get a whole bunch of experience. So I was looking to grow in my career and change some things. And then I had also lost a family member to suicide. So it was something that was a little bit closer to my heart. And I think, as everybody knows, when you have a piece of that mission that's personally motivating on those tough days when programs and fundraising and volunteerism isn't going the way you want, there's something that keeps driving you towards a bigger goal. And I was excited to try that with AFSP. And over the last year plus, it has been an awesome role and a journey of great days and bad days and everything in between. But it was something that was just perfect timing for me to jump into.
That's amazing. And I, when you say that fundraising was like one of your favorite things, I'm like, well, for me, in my nonprofit, I'm like, I don't know why, but I feel like I have a block around fundraising for some reason, and which is weird since I'm the founder of a nonprofit, but different story, different day.
Yeah, everybody thinks I'm a weirdo for it, but to me, I think There's something about fundraising to me, even when my wife and I do our own donations, there's something so powerful about that, about giving to an organization and receiving minimal or nothing, or just know you're doing good for the world that you may never see or feel. And I love being the steward of that for other people, whether it's through individual gifts that they make directly to the organization or through large events like our walks. That's how I really got started, was walks and golf tournaments. I love those days. And then getting to plan all of these details and the nitty gritty of this event that is a single day, but you plan for it for probably 9 months out of the year. Yeah, that is just the stuff that I love to do. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I was first introduced to American Foundation of Suicide Prevention after my sister passed, but more specifically with the walks that were at Coors Field, and I was just amazed and blown away by how many people actually came out. And I could only imagine at that point in time how much it would take to put on that event. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's just incredible how much it's even grown over the last, I mean, 7 years that I've been in this world and watching the growth and things change. And like you said, like it can be really super rewarding. And then there's days that you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, definitely. And I envy you. I wish I would have seen one of those big Coors Field walks going around the concourse. I'm a huge baseball fan, so I grew up inside of Coors Field, but I know it as a baseball stadium, not necessarily a suicide prevention walk. And it's crazy to think that there was so many people there that we actually outgrew the concourse of Coors Field. We are too big of an event for the inside of Coors Field, which is insane to think. So yeah, we moved it to a park this year just to be able to support people, and it is. Those events are so amazing to see everybody come out, and whether they're somebody who lost a loved one, whether they've survived a suicide attempt, or whether they're just there to support mental health because they know it's important nowadays. There's so many walks of life there, and they're all together supporting one end goal and mission, and walking for it and fundraising for it and volunteering for it. And it's an exhausting day, but it's probably one of the best days of the year. It's my favorite day.
Yeah, it definitely when I started there was maybe like I don't know, I want to say like I have no idea what the number was, but I do know that it was much smaller when the first time I ever went. And then as it grew, to be honest, I was like, there are way too many people here. So I'm glad they kind of got out of that space because I was like, I will maybe do a couple laps and then we're out because there are too many people here. So,
Yeah,
yes.
it gets so I'm sure it got overwhelming and crowded. And I went to the All-Star game when it was at Coors Field, and I was like, this is too many people here. So I definitely understand it
Yeah.
gets crowded.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I mean, they're making you guys are like making the shift obviously like that's what we have to do especially within nonprofits is pivot and change and adapt and make it, a little bit more flexible and fluid depending on what comes up. And I know we saw that especially throughout the pandemic of the walks and every other event and having to kind of pivot and change and like mold to what the need is currently.
Yeah, you definitely have to stay on your toes. I learned that a little bit of the hard way. I took over fundraising events at my last organization in December of 2019, just enough time to get super excited about them and start looking at in-person options just for the world to stop and fundraising events to change completely. So yeah, that was definitely a time change. And then through 2021 on how to pivot, but I think some of that has actually served me now later, through the last couple of years, on how to change an event location from somewhere so common as Coors Field and so easy to park at and access and everything, to going to a Denver park that doesn't have some of those same features of simple and easy parking and where's everybody going to meet up at and those items. So yeah, it's definitely was a lot of lessons learned through the nonprofit space.
Yeah, I mean, we're going on. with our different events. We're like on our fifth annual for our gala and then sixth annual for our film festival. And it just feels like it is always changing and we have to kind of not recreate the wheel, but it's like, how can we make it better and do better? And it's a learning experience, definitely. And I'm curious if you wouldn't mind just sharing more about your journey through your loss.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm happy to. So it's now been, let's see, it's now 7 years ago. I lost a grandparent to suicide. She was in her 70s. She'd been struggling with mental health, and was reaching out to my brother and I, trying to give us some items that she had. I lived in Grand Junction at the time, and she lived in Loveland. So a little bit of ways, and it just didn't make it work. I had focused on other things, and then it was on. I remember the day. I remember where I was. I remember every moment of it. Um, it was a Monday night. I was at a friend's house, and we were sitting at their dining room table talking, and we were supposed to be working on a chemistry project. I was in my last year of college. And we were supposed to be working on a chem project, and we were doing everything but that because it did not sound interesting. And my dad called me, and it was very unusual. My dad is one of those people that his phone generally works one direction.
Mhm.
So it was like, that's a little weird. So I answered it, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And my dad's very direct, and he just said, hey, I need you to be sitting down for this. And I said, okay. And he told me that my grandma had died by suicide. At that moment, I had no idea what to say. I had no idea how to react. I had never lost a loved one or a friend to suicide. I had heard about it happening to other people and other families, but never so directly to myself. Um, so I got up from the dining room table. I ran into my buddy's room and closed his door. And I asked him, I was like, what did you just say? And he said that my grandma had killed herself. And it was just like time froze. I had no idea what to do. And I just was so confused. And I said, okay, what now? And he said, I don't know. I'll call you with details as they come. And I said, okay. So that kind of arose and we continued on. My dad and my grandma had a little bit of a strained relationship anyways. And so it was a very difficult time for him as well. And then we had a really small memorial service for her. And then my family basically stopped talking about it. Didn't talk about that we had lost a loved one to suicide, didn't talk about any of the mental health warning signs that we had seen, anything that could have been done more proactive to try and help her. And it would really have just stopped there. And then I came on board with AFSP, as I said earlier, and found out that people talk about their suicide losses regularly, and it actually helps other people heal and other families learn how to have a conversation about it. And then I can tell you in the last year, I've had a lot of conversations about it with my dad, and we've learned a lot of things together, and definitely taken off some of the weight off of our family about some of those struggles that other family members have dealt with, and learned how to help people when they're looking for when they're help seeking and we don't necessarily know it. So yeah, it was a tough time, but we just had our International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day, and I got to share a little bit of my story. And then directly when I got done off of stage and we were going to our breakout groups, I had a woman walk directly to me, like I was the only person in the room. And she was like, we have something very much in common. And I was like, okay, what's that? She's like, I also lost someone to suicide, and no one in my family talks about it. And it was just this really crazy moment that it's like, we're not alone in this, whether it's our own mental health struggles or suicide attempts or losing someone to suicide, that there's so many other people in the world that deal with that same issue and not talking about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, for sharing that. And I also am super bummed that I wasn't able to come to the International Suicide Survivor Day because my family unfortunately had COVID during that week. Um, but yeah, I mean, the whole point of this show, right, is to have these conversations that nobody wants to have. And I hear that so often uh as I talk about my story too, is that, oh, we don't talk about it anymore in our family. And it's become this like thing within families that it's actually severed the ties because nobody knows how to talk about it or process it. And it's like this heavy, heavy weight. And it's amazing that you now are in this place that you're able to have those conversations, especially with your dad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been really powerful to help other families, not just mine. That's super rewarding to, I'll say it every day probably, but like one suicide is too many, but not talking about it leads to more suicides, and that's way too much. And so helping other people get rid of some of that stigma and some of that idea that part of your family is broken or not okay because you lose a loved one to suicide. The provisional CDC data just came out for 2022 suicide rates, and it looks like over 49,000 Americans died by suicide in 2022. That's crazy. That's 49,000 other families that have also lost a loved one in a single year. Now, those could be families who are losing multiple people or going through the trauma again, or friends that are losing other friends in their group. And it's crazy that we don't talk about it as much. And so that's really my goal, is just to educate people on what to look out for. If you run into somebody in a mental health crisis, what do we do? How do we help them? Because, we all showed up here today. I'm not a mental health professional. We'll leave here today as non-mental health professionals, but there are resources out there that are available 24/7 that we can connect people with. And so many people don't know about them. But if we can educate folks about that, about the resources, about knowing that this stigma needs to really go away, then we can make the world a safer place and a healthier world altogether.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm like, you're speaking to my heart because that's totally what I talk about all the time. And I do, so we're gonna go to a quick sponsored break, but once we come back, I want to also share with you something like based off of what you were actually just talking about. Because my husband sent me the link to the article that literally just came out recently about the number of deaths last year. So we're going to go to this quick sponsored break and then we'll be right back and we'll chat a little bit more.
Hi, I'm Julie Jones Hamilton, and my partner, Lynn Kitchen, and I co-host World's Greatest Motivators every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific on the Achieve channel. Come join us and the best thought leaders in the planet today, right here at E360 TV.
And like that, we're back. That commercial apparently just got cut off. That's fine. If you happen to just be joining us, make sure that if you're watching this on YouTube, that you click down the subscribe button. Or if you're watching on any of the other streaming platforms, add this into your favorites, your watch list, whatever they happen to call it, so that you don't miss another episode. And Michael and I are chatting about his journey through the loss of his grandma to suicide, and now how he works with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention as the area director for Colorado specifically. And you said something before we went to the break. So, like you said, the stats now came out for 2022, which is a lot faster, I feel like, now that they're like actually getting the stats together. But I started thinking because um Veterans Day, right? There is an organization that we ordered shirts from, and they have the 22 a day for veteran suicide. And I got really curious, and I was like, okay, well, if there's 22 veterans that die per day, what is the average number of just people in general, and especially in the US? And so I started doing the numbers, and it ended up being about 135 people per day, and that blew my mind. But that goes along with the number that you just said too.
Yeah, it's insane that the numbers are what they are, and the veteran data blows my mind away as well. And it's like we're definitely trying to work on some more that we can do for our veterans programs. We fortunately just hired a veteran and active duty military program director that works on our national group, so that'll spread out through all of our chapters. And I'm really excited to see what comes of that. But it's everyone. It's senior populations. People are always amazed when I tell them that I lost a grandparent to suicide because they think senior populations don't struggle with that. They do. They have other comorbidities that they lose their life to, but they also struggle with suicide and loneliness and isolation. And people forget about those things sometimes. But just because you grow older doesn't mean that those things go away at all.
Yeah. I think actually, I mean, from the last time I was kind of looking at it too, is that there's a higher rate as you get older. And I guess when I think about that, it in a way it makes sense. And I know like my husband's grandpa also died by suicide, and I talked to his mom, and she said, like, I get it. He was in pain. Like, he was a veteran, and he was all constantly in pain, and he was on all these medications. And she's like, I don't fault him for that. And I get it. And I was like, wow, that's such a different perspective to think about it in that way, because my sister, she was 43 years old. She was younger, and it felt like there was more for her to live for. That sounds horrible saying it that way, but yeah, it's very prominent in the older communities, and like you said, I don't think we talk about it enough.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it comes up in the major news like once or twice a year. Sometimes when this data comes out and it's some staggering number, or when a celebrity dies by suicide. And when those things happen, we try to one get out a PR statement, and two connect with those news outlets so that they report on it correctly, use safe language, so that way we don't see other people who are struggling with it see it as an outlet. But it's definitely something that it needs to be talked about so much more. And that's why like programs we do, programs that you guys are doing at BCC Evolution, like those community based, just public education of come in, just learn the warning signs, learn what to do. That's so important because it like from any public health model, starting and just spreading that information out, and you never know who that could impact. You really don't. Like we count the heads in the room, but we don't know who they are, what they're experiencing, what they're going to go out into the world and have an impact on. And so that's really important when even if it's a group of 10 people or if it's a group of 110 people or more, those events and that education is so crucial for working on this problem.
Yeah, and I know that AFSP does a lot of the research behind suicide in general, which is such a key piece of all the information too, is knowing like why people do what they do, and how do we go about eliminating. I don't like using that word, because I feel like it will never be fully eliminated, unfortunately, but we also can make those strides to again have these conversations and really give out the education of the warning signs, being able to have people not feel so alone, and also having multiple organizations. We're all aiming at the same goal, and maybe down the road we will eliminate suicide altogether.
Yeah, we're really proud of our research and the amount we're doing. like I wish we didn't have to do it. I wish we didn't have to spend our funds on that type of research, but it is, and we've got to figure out a way to what is a more effective treatment for somebody who's struggling with mental health. What are the actual practices that are going to have impact on somebody? How can we follow up with families that lose someone to suicide? How can we look for warning signs earlier in kids that are in school? How can we do some of that so it's helpful? And then how can we branch out into those, other communities that struggle with suicide more? And what can we do that's impactful for them? Because so many communities across America and across the world are all so different on how they handle it. So we have honestly so much research going on, and it's so cool to see it. And that one thing that I love about my job is that all of that research is open access. So if like you want to, you can go on to our research site and pull up anything that we've researched since we made it all public access, and look through articles and learn stuff for yourself on if you're struggling or if a loved one's struggling, on what might be effective for you. So I love the research component of it. I think it's going to change the world one day.
Yeah, that is amazing. I know I've done some poking around on the research, but I didn't realize that all of it was available for free. That is really incredible.
Yeah, it's all open access. It's just part of how we wanted to make it, because we know that suicide is a global problem, and not everybody has the resources to put this kind of financial backing into research, or even have the ability to go and find it. So we wanted to put it all in one site where people can go and look for it. It's not behind a paywall. It's none of that pieces. You don't have to donate to see it. It's right there, open access. You can search by the year. I use, just Control F on my computer to find relevant topics. I know we're looking at doing like a research lunch and learn. So reading through some of those things, I've learned stuff all over again, like how to read a scientific article. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but just like so much information there that, if it was a researcher that's now putting two and two together, they can go and look at those old articles really easily and then put some of their personal research together. And who knows, they may come up with the next treatment that's more effective than anything else we have.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like a loaded topic too, is like, how can we change the dynamic? But I think that also, like, there's a lot of societal changes, professional changes in the mental health space, like how we handle people after they've had an attempt, and where they're going, the inpatient, outpatient. Like, there's so many layers that have to be researched. And like you said, is most of the time we in some communities don't have access to be able to do that. So having the AFSP be able to do that is huge. And
Yeah.
we will get to a place that one day it's like, hey, this is what we have figured out, and this is how we can implement it. So like, now we need the world to like come together and help us implement all of these things.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes back to that public health model of, the education piece. It's not just for education, it's for implementation on pieces of suicide prevention on the forefront of supporting suicide loss survivors so that they don't struggle with their own mental health, possibly after losing a loved one. So, yeah, it's going to have to be a bigger national approach and global approach for us to really solve some of this process. But we'll be here until we work ourselves out of a job, right?
Exactly.
That's the goal.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, one of the key pieces that I'm starting to focus on more with my nonprofit is we're doing a trusted resource hub. So it's not really the research aspect, like the education portion. It's more of connecting the actual resources. And that's kind of like how you and I got connected too, is being able to play in the sandbox all together, right? Like, how can we all go at this together, as even the small and the big nonprofits, and really tackle it on that global level. And I think that's where it's going to come from and where it is already starting. So then we just keep growing and growing and growing, and we get everybody on a global scale to want to attack it too.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something we've talked about. And how do we share resources? I feel like, so many nonprofits do it the old way sometimes, of like holding your cards so close to your chest. And it's like, no, this program's mine and I'm only going to be the one to provide it. If you know of somebody that needs it, call me, I'll come provide it. And it's like, that doesn't work for me, right? We're all chasing the same goal at the end of the day. We love how our model works. We do a training for the trainer on our programs. We either go into a community or we bring community members to us. We train them in our programs, and then we say, please take this back to your community and present it where you feel is right. Educate your community in what's relevant to you. Because like I did a training for the trainer in Steamboat. It's only 3 hours away from us, but Steamboat is such a different community than Denver. I had a college roommate that was from Steamboat, and I can tell you, we did life very differently. But they're going to know how to educate their community the best. And I can provide those tools and resources free of charge for them to go and then take that on. And they're already having some success with that. They're going and they're educating the high schoolers and the middle schoolers on what to look out for in yourself and in others, and be mental health aware. And they're taking it into their community on how talking about this problem can actually save lives. It's not that talking about it makes people more at risk for suicide. Talking about it is actually going to save more lives than anything. So when we can do things like that, and we can build these micro hubs and partner with other organizations so that we make a huge stance, it's so powerful to move mountains that way. And it's so much easier to do it. And you have different perspectives, people that want to do things a little bit differently. And it's like, that is totally fine. Let's do it differently. You do it that way, I'll do it this way. We'll meet in the middle. And at the end of the day, we don't really, it's sometimes it's hard to count the number, but we know that we've saved lives. We don't always know how many, but we know we've had an impact, and we hope to continue growing that, like you said. And just one day it's just going to be this wave of everybody working together for the same goal of wiping out suicide.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you said also just being able to allow them to put their own spin on it, right? Because the community, they know their community best. And
Yeah.
that's actually been a conversation, because we're redesigning what we're calling Give Youth a Voice. And that was kind of the conversation that we started having. I actually am lucky enough to have the Denver Impact team select BCC Evolution to work on our project. And that was kind of a conversation we were having, was how do we disseminate this? And is it something like that we hold on and we control, or is it like something we just go out and let it fly and give people the information? And I think that is a key piece of especially what you all are doing, is being able to have them come in as volunteers, train, and then go out and serve their communities with the information. Because yeah, the conversation is just important. And however lives are saved and people are educated and this happens more often, that's really going to be the end goal of being able to eliminate suicide, for sure.
Yeah, and it's so cool to see it. And the local folks know their resources and their mental health professionals uh, just so much deeper than we're able to. We cover the whole state. We have some chapters that are broken up on different states, but we have to cover all of Colorado. I love every inch of Colorado, but it is very difficult to cover all of Colorado. Like this time of year, getting to Telluride is not the easiest trip.
Yeah.
but if we can have people there that know their resources, that know the struggle of surviving a winter in Telluride, that it is beautiful, but it is hard, and they can train those things. That's so much more of an impact, and so many more people show up to that project than if somebody from Denver is coming to present on a mental health topic again. So it's such a powerful tool. I always love. There's a group that is in, now I'm forgetting the name of it, but they're in Southeast Colorado. and they do a project called the Coffee Shop Project. So down there, it's in Rocky Ford, the cantaloupe capital. But they have all these farmers that struggle with mental health, that they're losing community members to suicide. And there's another farmer that's like, there's got to be something we can do. Tried the stuff from bigger organizations and groups that aren't from Rocky Ford. There's not a nonprofit for mental health and suicide prevention in Rocky Ford. Wow. So they started something called the Coffee Shop Project, where folks can come in and get a cup of coffee and have a donut and talk to other people about what they're struggling with and then how they're solving their issues, and then taking off some of that burden. Like, I'm not dealing with this alone. Everybody in my community is also dealing with this. And I know he's more of an expert in the subject than I might be. So if I'm struggling more with that, I might reach out to him, and vice versa. And they found that it's such a powerful tool for community connections with these people that live 25, 50, 100 miles apart, all come together around a cup of coffee. So I don't want to say it, but coffee solves a lot of problems in the world.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I think and this is a conversation that I've had with a lot of guests on here, but then also my board and several other people. We were really talking about community, right? Like, everybody's really looking for connection. And I think we are really realizing that even more now, coming I keep saying out of the pandemic, but we're realizing how important connection really truly is, and why we really need that community. And I love that they're doing coffee and donuts, and you never know when that moment that somebody shows up that they really needed that support, and you might have literally just saved their life.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that just one moment of connecting over coffee and a donut can really change people's lives. And people don't know if it can, but it really does. And it's just that personal connection and sitting down with someone. And then if you can at the same time be educated in the warning signs for suicide, and you can help that person and get them connected to resources, that's just a win-win at the same time. So I always preach it, but just education. Get educated in the warning signs. Know what to do if you run into somebody who's struggling with mental health or in a suicidal crisis. It's just so important to know those things.
Yeah, and it kind of amazes me how many people don't know. I mean, they don't know what is actually out there to help in those certain situations, or who they can call, or who they can talk to. And I know, I train on we do mental health first aid as like our main class that we do, and we talk about like who are those people that, like, the professionals, who are the non-professionals, and we have those conversations. But it still, to this day, and we've been doing the classes since 2018, every single class, I don't know if I've had anybody like get all of or really most of the professionals that they could talk to. They just don't know who you can actually talk to, which I sometimes I'm like, wow, we still don't know this information.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. I do not know where the number came from, but I heard a number that only like 13% of people in America know about 988 and what it's actually there for. And that statistic blows my mind. It's like, that's so crazy that we've had this national number now going into a second year, and how productive it's been, how helpful of a tool it's really been. But still only 13% of our population knows about it. It's like, what if only 13% of the population knew about 911 and those resources? It's like, that'd be terrible. So yeah, whenever we do it, we share those resources. I have people save 988 as a contact. And I had a high school senior ask me, he was like, why do I need to save it as a contact? It's 3 digits. And I was like, it's not for you. If you have an iPhone, you can share a contact very easily. So if you know somebody else who is now texting you or just called you and they're in a mental health crisis, you can send them the contact and they don't have to think about it. Because when someone is in a mental health crisis, they can't walk through those steps. They don't know how to memorize a new 3-digit number when they're thinking about taking their own life. So sending them a contact where they just have to call or text the suicide prevention hotline. It's that easy, and it can save somebody's life. But yeah, we've got to continue making sure people are aware of it. I love the mental health first aid piece about it because it teaches people the steps to walk through on how to save somebody, and just goes more in depth. And I love those deeper programs, those day and those 2-day programs. They're so powerful. I always say our programs are just an introduction. Like, you've got a bite of the pie, now you got to go get the whole piece, and then you can have the whole pie after that. And there's so much more to learn. Like, I still try to be a sponge and soak up education and attend new programs whenever I can, because there's always something new you'll pick up and some new tool that you'll use and remember when you run into somebody that may be in a crisis.
Yeah, I love that. I'm like, I go on stages all the time. I should be like, okay, everybody take out your cell phone and put 988 in there. Like, that's a brilliant idea. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah. With the high schoolers, do wait until the very end, because once the phones come out, they don't go back.
Right? You're like, okay, not yet, but
Yeah, not yet. I moved the slide. It's on the very last one. I'm like, all right, thank you for coming. And
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. I do I have like a crisis page that I take with me, and thanks to you, now I have some of the AFSP brochures that I can also
Good.
take to events that we are doing within our community. And I think that is such a great, and also the like national crisis line. I've talked to them in the past and gotten some of their information. And I think that's the thing, at least for me, is I want to have those kind of resources at whatever table, wherever event we happen to be, so that people start to have this information in their hands and be able, I mean, I love that you came on today too, because we all have a story, and there's a reason why we get into doing the things that we do, but also being able to have these type of important conversations is so key. And that blew my mind that only like 13% know about 988. I'm like, I say it all the time, and
Right.
I feel like everybody says it, but hey, I'm sure when 911 started, that was kind of the thing. They didn't quite know how to get a hold of emergency services, and then it became a thing. So yeah, keep talking for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where we go from here. I think we can only continue doing more research, continue sharing more education, learning what education is the most effective. There's so many programs out there, and people are always like, "What's the best one?" And it's like, I can't tell you there's the best one. I selfishly want to tell you ours are, but that might not be true, because everybody learns so differently, and it's like you might need to go to several programs. Never assume that you take like one class and you're like, I am now suicide prevention educated, I'm good. No, that's not where it stops. Go and try different classes. There's definitely classes that and programs that have had more of an effect on me than others. And there's some that I'm just like, this is probably the best for this workplace, but try several, see what works for them. And people respond differently. Even my wife and I, we think about things completely different. And she's like, that program wouldn't be good for me, but maybe this one would. And I'm like, well, I'm the opposite of that. So apparently we're going to do both. So it's one of those things that we have to continue looking for what is the most effective for us. What are we going to remember the most to help somebody else or ourselves when we're going through a crisis, and how to save some more lives. But the work's not done, that's for sure.
Yeah, and definitely same way as I mean, I've started mental health first aid, but I know there's like QPR. There is another one recently that I heard of, and it's escaping my mind right now, but I definitely want to go through that one. So yeah, just like you said, I mean, every single class that I teach, I learn from my participants too. And that's the coolest part, I think, as being the educator. Like, I just trained a bunch of first responders, and the gentleman, one of the gentlemen that came in, we teach you how to do the recovery position now. And he was like, don't put them on their right side. You have to put them on the left side. And so like I learned something new from
Yeah.
somebody that came in as a first responder and has been trained in that kind of first aid. And so I'm able to learn from them. And yeah, there's so many that are out there. And I think that every single one of them are valuable, and it is definitely something to keep learning about, because I don't know if we don't ever or won't ever fully understand the why unless it's somebody, I mean, because everybody experiences things so differently, that the why behind especially suicide is going to be different for everybody. So just understanding a little bit more and being alert to those signs and symptoms that have been studied and researched and have found to be the signs and symptoms, those are definitely going to help. And getting that education is just going to give you a level up on having that conversation.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm the same way. I love learning from participants. We have a Q&A section at the end, and I've definitely had some of those like participant moments where they ask me a question and I'm like, I don't have an answer for you right now, and I don't have like the ability to search for it. But I'm gonna get their information and I'm gonna go and look for it. And then if I find an answer, I'm gonna be like, this is what I found. Is this answering your question? And it educates me on the other side of the thing, because through doing, I don't know if I've hit 100 presentations yet, but getting up there, there's always some questions that come out of the woodworks, and you're like, I don't know, but I'm gonna find out, or you're gonna learn something new, like a recovery position, and yeah, it's always so different. But yeah, there's definitely a power behind that education to help change it, and um, help make a movement in the world that suicide needs to stop, and it's got to start here.
Yeah. So we are coming to the end, but I'm curious, is there anything else that you want to share that maybe we didn't touch on?
I think it's awesome that we have a platform and we can share our stories. I really appreciate you having me. I encourage people, if they're willing, if they're able, and if they're ready, to do the same. Go share your story, because you don't know who else it's going to impact. I now have friends who have opened up about their loss of loved ones as well, and their struggles with personal mental health, because I was able to share my story. So if you're willing, if you're able, if you're ready, go share your story, learn how to do it safely, because it can definitely change your life and those around you. So that's definitely where I'm at, and I hope people can get involved and help stop suicide.
Absolutely. And so we have couple more minutes, but I just want to ask you, so can you just specifically tell a little bit about how sharing your story safely? Because I know that has a lot to do with words, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So a big part is, we have to stop using the word committed. For some reason, we put committed and suicide together like it's a crime. It's not. Somebody's going through a medical crisis, a medical mental health crisis, and that ends up taking their life. So we have got to stop using that. Use died by suicide, took their own lives, killed themselves, things like that. Dying by suicide is not a crime. The other thing is, I really avoid it because it's hard for some people. Is not, I don't share method of suicide ever, how people died, how they took their own lives. It's unnecessary to me. We don't need to share that story. We understand that they died by suicide, and to somebody else who's new in a suicide loss journey, that can be really triggering and really upsetting, and basically stop whatever productive conversation you were having. And I always say, make sure it's a safe environment. When I had those conversations with my friends and my family, it wasn't something that we texted about. It wasn't even something that we did over FaceTime. It's something that's in person, because people get really uncomfortable about it. So it doesn't have to be a huge group setting. I don't recommend doing it at your best friend's wedding. Do it in a safe space, where it's you one-on-one, small groups, whatever that may be, so everybody can share their story safely. And if someone's not ready to share their story, there's new loss survivors that jump right in and they start out helping us educate. but then someone asks them why they get involved, why they're involved, and they can't share their story because they're not ready to, and that's okay. But make sure that if there's other people around that aren't ready to share their story, it's not something that's forced, because it needs to be organic, it needs to be true, and we don't want to be causing more harm than good by sharing our stories.
Yes. Thank you for wrapping that up. I meant to ask it earlier and I forgot when you said it earlier.
Yep.
So, how can people, if they want to find you or information about you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can find all of our information, contact information for me at afsp.org/Colorado. So American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, it's a paragraph, afsp.org/Colorado. That's our chapter. But if you're somewhere else, afsp.org, and then scroll to the bottom of the page, it'll bring you to the chapter that's closest to you. Go out, get involved. We're always looking for new volunteers, for more people to get involved with us. We just had a huge volunteer come on to a bigger position with us today that is going to be amazing and just a huge help. So we're always looking for more helping hands, that people that care about mental health and want to get involved in suicide prevention. So yeah, you can find all of our information there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. This was an amazing conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing your joint journey too.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Again, on Wednesdays, I bring guests who have a story to share, whatever they have been through in this thing that we call life, and really looking into that place of hope. And like Michael shared there towards the end, is we need to be aware of how we're sharing our story. This isn't something that I talk about all that often, but I try to use the language completed or died by, and I haven't ever shared how. And that is one of the key pieces, is we need to really stop triggering people and get away from the committed or successful. There's lots of words that we don't want to use, but that's why you should come to one of our classes. You can learn all about how to properly ask the question about suicide, and also how we talk about suicide. And I'm just so thankful that Michael was able to come, because the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention is doing incredible things, especially around research and education and all those things. So I am just blessed that he was able to come on here, and especially being over all of Colorado, of course, since I'm in Colorado. So whatever you do, make sure you come back and join me. I will be back on Monday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and I'm pretty sure I have a guest on Monday. I don't know. We'll see. So, all right. Have a wonderful evening.